All right. Hello, everybody. While everyone is filing in, I will go ahead and kick off today's webinar. So first and foremost, thank you for joining us today. My name is Kenna Carlson. I am a research associate with Work to Zero and the moderator for today's session with Quanta Services. Today is the last in our Green Cross Award finalist webinar series. Last but not least, the Green Cross for Safety Innovation Award recognizes individuals or organizations who are addressing long-held safety challenges through a new or novel approach. And we wanted to take some time to host some webinars with these organizations so that the finalists have a platform to talk about some of the really amazing work that they have been doing. As a reminder, the Green Cross celebration will be held next Tuesday, September 20th, in person in San Diego, California. For more information, you can go to nsc.org/support-NSC. Today, we are joined by Quanta Services for the final webinar in this series. The webinars have been recorded and they will be posted on our YouTube channel if you are unable to see either Fatigue Science or Wear 360, who are the other two finalists. And last point, if at any point you have any questions for the participants today, please use the chat function and leave them in the chat box and we will do our best to address those questions. But without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Barbara and James from Quanta Services. If you two could go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kenna. I will go ahead and share my screen if that's okay. All right. Everybody good? See it? Perfect. So, all right. So my name is James Gregorick. I'm with Quanta Services in the Safety, Health, Environment, Quality, and Training Department in the corporate office. And so I've been with Quanta for about 12 years and excited to really talk about our capacity model today. And I'll pass it off to Barbara to introduce herself.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Kenna. Good morning. My name is Barbara Cristenziani, and I manage all of the capacity model efforts, which we're going to be talking about in a little bit today. Technically, my title is Manager of Human Performance and Environmental Health and Safety Programs at Quanta. I've been at the organization going on 3 years, and it has been a ride. So we're super excited to talk about all the hard work that we put in the last couple of years for the capacity model. So thanks, Kenna.
Excellent. Thank you both. So before we start talking about the capacity model, do you mind just telling us a little bit about Quanta, who you are, and a little bit about your organization?
Absolutely. I get that question a lot. So it's really, Quanta is honestly the largest company no one's ever heard of. That's the way I like to put it. From the outside looking in, just pretty much we're a utility contractor, right? So we build power lines, pipelines, telecommunications, renewable. But honestly, we like to see ourselves as a complete solutions provider for our companies and for our clients, right? And so while we are doing a lot of the construction work out in the field, we're positioned and have enough companies within our umbrella that we can design, we can engineer, we can manage projects, we can install, maintain, and do replacement, right? So Quanta Services is technically the parent company of about, we're over 150 different operating unit companies. And so, my title is Manager OpU Support. And so our job at the corporate office is to support those operating units as they maintain, build, and, innovate their safety programs throughout the organization. And so we're really excited about the capacity model and things that we're doing, but there's just so many good things out there from our company that we're just, really proud of. And so, but if you look at kind of the breakdown of what we do and how we do it, as you can see, about 51% of our work is electric power infrastructure solutions, with the remaining half kind of broken out into renewable energy and underground infrastructure. So that's kind of the breakdown of who we are and what we do.
Thank you, James. So Quanta is being recognized for your innovative approach to workplace safety. What kind of prompted the shift away from traditional models?
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, we are a construction company, right? We build and maintain these utility projects, and so we face a lot of the challenges that a normal construction company would face out there. At the early beginning stages of Quanta, about 25 years ago, we were struggling with just honestly getting a rate of incidents down to a manageable level, right? So we're having a lot of the same problems that a lot of other organizations have of just too frequent amount of incidents, right? And so throughout that time, honestly, we've done a great job. We're nowhere close to where we want to be, but we're able to, when it comes to the numbers of safety, get it to a point where we feel good about it. There's room for improvement. We've made a lot of progress, and kind of the beginning stages of Quanta, we were really focused on the compliance, on the prevention side, on just basic safety 101. And we got to a point, again, like I said, a couple of years ago, we were doing pretty good, but we said, like, what's next? How can we continue to kind of be innovative and go to that next step to really focus on safety when it comes to more of the serious incidents, right? And so we've looked at hand incidents. We've looked at sprains and strains. We looked at all the basic stuff. But unfortunately, if you look at the history of our industry, of our company, it was still kind of the incidents when it comes to the serious ones, the fatalities were unfortunately still there. And we realized that the things we're doing to fix the small stuff, the sprains and strains, the rolled ankles, the hands, that's different than fixing the higher energy events that you see that come from causing more serious incidents. And so we got together and said, hey, how do we move to that next phase of safety, right? And so we had a new vice president of safety come in, Matt Comfort, to really challenge us. We had a new CEO at the time, Duke Austin, who challenged us as well to say, hey, what's that next step when it comes to safety? And we all got together, and with the minds of us, but then also minds of a lot of people in the industry, from the Todd Conklins, the Cindy Deckers, the Bob Edwards, the people that are really challenging the status quo of safety. We really figured out, like, what's that next step, right? How do we get together to focus on those high energy events, what's normally called SIFs, serious incidents and fatalities, like those kind of things, to really focus our efforts on that. And then out of those discussions, out of a lot of hard work and dedication from the team, was born the capacity model. And we're excited to kind of go through that today to really talk about the elements and what that looks like as we focus and move our journey towards that new view of safety and looking at safety differently based on what we've normally done in the past.
All right, well, that brings me to my next question, which is, what is the capacity model?
Yeah, so the capacity model is really a different approach, as James said. And I think I'm going to first start with how it's different. So, really for years, we've been taught that all accidents are preventable. And while that's a really noble aspiration, we know that people make mistakes. So we're acknowledging that, maybe it's not realistic to expect perfection. The system's not perfect, equipment's not perfect, people aren't perfect. And that's been a really big acknowledgement. We've also kind of shifted our definition of safety. So traditionally, we have defined safety as the absence of incidents. And James mentioned, kind of that overall incident rate. And really now we're defining it more of the presence of capacity. So meaning, we know it's not a matter of if an event happens, it's when it happens. And so we want to put controls in place so that when we do fail, we fail safely. So for what the capacity model is, you can see on their screen, there's quite a few elements here. But first, I really wanted to stress that this is not a program. or an initiative. It's really a very different approach to how we plan, execute, and learn from the work. Again, as James mentioned, we're striving for the elimination of what was previously called CIS, what we call life-threatening, life-altering, and life-ending events. And we call these sticky events, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But really at the core of the capacity model is it's a human and organizational performance philosophy, which basically recognizes that people make mistakes, and when mistakes or failures actually do occur, how leaders respond matters tremendously. And also, if we want to know more about an event or how work gets done, we do that by talking to the people that actually do the work. So, so there's three pillars, a couple of like the structural elements of the capacity model, and you can, see on the right side of the screen. So, prevention, learning, and capacity for failure. So, first with prevention, hands down, we will always work to prevent incidents. With learning, we're going to learn about how work is done from the people that actually do it. And then capacity for failure. So we really want to apply enough safeguards and controls so that when an incident does occur, it occurs essentially without catastrophic consequence. So along with the three pillars, there's the four elements, and this is really kind of what we focus on day to day. So first is stuff that kills you. And that's what we call sticky. So that's really drawing attention to a focus on hazards that can seriously injure or kill you. And we do that in conjunction with the energy wheel. So the energy wheel is a tool for our crews really kind of to like systematically identify hazards before and during work, and ultimately discuss which ones of those are sticky, which ones could seriously injure or kill you. With sticky controls, so this involves looking at critical tasks that our organization performs, and then the minimum controls that absolutely have to be in place before work begins. So that kind of focuses on the hazards and really the worst thing that can happen. So like the unwanted events that could result in those sticky events, or those life-threatening, life-altering, and life-ending events. And then with operational learning, that's a pretty simple approach actually to learning, and we rely on our frontline workers to tell us the story of their work. We bring people closest to the work together to listen to their context, and they're the ones that come up with the recommendations that improve the process and systems in which they work. So that's kind of like the capacity model in a nutshell.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that, Barbara. How long have you been using this approach at Quanta?
It's a few years now. So the capacity model was officially launched toward the end of 2019. And over the past 3 years, we've sort of slowly socialized the other concepts. And we've been releasing training and working with leaders and managers and crews really kind of in phases over time. And a huge differentiator for Quanta is the partnership with our in-house Department of Education with like a curricula design and development team. And those folks are really the subject matter experts in adult education methodology. So what we produce is not just a PowerPoint talk at you training. It is designed with the student in mind, and everything we do is with a focus on being consumable, both for leaders and our field staff. So it's been a couple of years, but we still say we're pretty early on. We've been releasing things kind of over time.
Gotcha. Excellent. So specific to the implementation, have you run into any barriers to this or any lessons learned as you've been slowly rolling this approach out?
Yeah, so as we've started to move towards the integration of the capacity model throughout our companies, we really wanted to focus on the consumability of it at a field level, right? So when we talk about sticky, when we talk about energy in the workplace, we wanted to make it where it's consumable at a field level. A lot of times when you talk about SIF and the move it more towards academic stuff, the people in the field, it goes right over their heads, right? They don't understand it, they don't want to understand it. But when you talk about stuff that kills you, or sometimes we use a little more colorful language when they're in the field, it's a lot more relatable, right? And so for them to understand like what's going to kill me on this job site, really focus on the high energy events from that standpoint. They get it, they understand it. It just becomes second nature to them. And so it gets them beyond just the normal things that they see. As far as barriers and challenges, as with anything that we do, there's going to be challenges. And Quanta specifically, because we're not just one organization. Like I said earlier, we're 150 different organizations. And so with that becomes different maturity levels, different just people, different everything. And so not only are we integrating this throughout the company, but we're trying to do it 150 different times. And so that's probably the biggest challenge, is just getting everyone on the same page. And we've developed integration guides of like, this is, kind of step one, then you move to here. Obviously leadership is critical to this, right? And we're so thankful that we have executive buy-in at all levels, from our corporate office to the operating units. Everyone's just, they're bought in. Right. This is the way we want to move. And this is who we are when it comes to safety, at Quanta. And so we're excited about that. But as far as challenges, that's definitely the biggest thing, is just understanding how we're going to approach it in the field and getting that message out. But like Barbara said, we're so thankful to have the Northwest Lineman College, from the curriculum team to the people on our side, to really roll it out and have those challenging conversations with leadership, because you are looking at it differently than we've done in a lot of the past, and how you respond to failure that Barbara mentioned, how you're looking at safety in the workplace is different. What success looks like is different. And so with change comes difficulty, and but we have a lot of momentum on our side, and we're continue to use that to our advantage, and we're excited for the future. Like we're just getting started, and so excited to see what's next throughout the organization, the industry, and what the capacity model looks like 5-10 years down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, James. Last question from me, and then we'll have some time at the end for the audience Q&A. Again, if you have any questions, pop them into the chat. I see a couple starting to roll in already. Keeping in mind that, you're still pretty early on into adopting this. Have you seen any impacts so far?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I think I want to mention that it's really all about this continuous improvement, really. And when you think about it, continuous improvement has no end. And so, we say we're on a journey. And, although we're early on in the journey, we have seen some powerful shifts, we believe. So, I think I mentioned earlier that really just even the definition of safety. So coming away from this idea that safety is just the absence of, incidents or accidents, but really the presence of capacity. So that's one shift. Another thing we've seen is our job site observations. Those have really shown that our workforce and our crews are becoming more and more increasingly aware of stuff that kills you through what we call sticky discussions. So that's basically a focus on the hazards that are sticky and the controls that you really need to have in place. So that's been helpful. Job briefings, in the field, we start our day with job briefings. Those have been restructured to identify hazards using the energy wheel. So again, using an energy-based sort of systematic approach has been incredibly helpful. And then noting which ones of them are sticky, and then what controls actually would prevent that thing from going wrong, or the bad thing. And then again, thinking about it, it's not a matter of if, it's when. So when that happens, what do we have on the other side of it to mitigate that sticky event? So that's been helpful as well. Some of the things that our leadership are doing, we know that leaders are really sort of incorporating and taking those human performance principles into their messaging and their communications. And that's been great because that's really set the tone like across the organization for the commitment to learning and improving. And I think that's, I mean, I've seen it for sure. This has really resulted in healthy dialogue, really different dialogue, I think, across the company, different than say, maybe 5 years ago, kind of about seeing workers really as being the problem solvers instead of as being the problem. So that's been great. James mentioned a lot of the work that we're doing with our in-house team. That's an operating unit, Northwest Lineman College, amazing stuff coming out of there. Really just offering those courses and integrating them into our new hire training, leadership onboarding. That's another benefit that we've seen. And I think overall, really, the business is demonstrating more of an appetite than ever to really learn about the context of events. So meaning like, instead of, why did this happen? Who did it? Get the bad actor out of the system and move on. We're really more focused on, what happened and how, and then learning from the people that do the work. So, our questions now are more focused on, how did the system fail the person rather than how did the person fail the system? So those are some really big differential changes we've seen over time.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, Barbara, and really, really great to hear. We have a couple of audience questions. First, can you give some examples of the titles of subjects that are implemented for education? So what sorts of topics are addressed in that education piece of things?
You want to take that, James? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can go through and you can fix my mistakes because we're all going to make them, right? If you look at the titles, we start from day one, right? We integrate what is the capacity model and elements of the capacity model in our new hire orientation. So it just gives like a brief rundown of kind of what we talked about today. What sticky is, what energy wheel is, what the controls are, and what operational learning is. And so that's kind of new hire orientation. And then we move into, as you kind of see on the picture, sticky and energy wheel, like energy in the workplace. So that goes a little bit deeper into what sticky is, what energies are on the job site, how do you identify them, how you control them. We've just rolled out our sticky controls framework, which focuses on building capacity within all of our critical work tasks, right? So we look at how do we prevent things from happening, but understanding things are going to happen, things are going to fail. And so when that happens, how do we build capacity into our work processes and work tasks? And so that's a class that goes in coordination with leadership and field level supervision. But then we also have sticky controls for crews, right? So how do we take that message down to the crew level? And then finally, the operational learning piece is something that we're, again, relatively new as we build facilitators throughout our organization and teach a different way of looking at investigations to really focus on successes and failures and getting that crew input into what actually happened.
I'll just add one more thing on top of there, James. And that's, we get the question all the time, well, how does our leadership feel about this? Where are our leaders on this? And so one of the things that we've developed is a leadership playbook. And that's really working very directly with the highest levels of our leaders, basically to say how you show up matters. And if we're leading these efforts across our business, what is your role in all of this? So that's, an additional piece outside of kind of the traditional curriculum. It's more of a facilitated conversation.
Thank you both. Next question, are you getting any feedback from the crews or field staff on this, and what do they think?
I'll let you handle that one, Barbara.
Okay, sure. So So yes, like I said, we are early on in the journey. And so probably, different pockets are responding, differently. But I think at this point, everybody knows what sticky is. And that's probably a primary focus right now. And the feedback that we've received is that it's really easy to understand. When you say stuff that kills you, or like James said, we usually use the more colorful version of that. Like people tend to gravitate toward that. It's a lot easier to see. So when we're talking about the hazards and utilizing the energy wheel, that seems to really resonate with folks. So a lot of the early feedback that we've gotten indicates that, they're listening, they're interested. And certainly as we've, moved forward with learning, for example, kind of this understanding that like the way that we plan the work is very different from how the work takes place. And so as they sort of, become part of those conversations, they're kind of like, yeah, where have you been? This is our life, right? And so I think just that acknowledgement really goes a long way. I think the organization is seeing like, we're listening to them, we're designing things for them, and we're trying to make it easy to do the right thing and hard to do the wrong thing. So the early feedback is really positive.
And I've also seen a lot of things from the field that they're moving towards the capacity side, right? And so historically, when I went to a job site and visited a crew and looked at their job briefing, it was all, how do you prevent something from happening? And it was all on the prevention side, very heavy on the prevention side. And I would always ask, what if this happened? Or what if this broke? Or what if this, all these what if questions? And they said, well, we're going to prevent it from happening. And so, and we're going to be our brother's keeper. We're going to keep our head on a swivel. We're going to do all these things to prevent things from happening. And just asking that question of, not if, but when this happens, that enables them to really focus on building capacity. And I think they've really finally got it, right? They've understood that it's not all about prevention. You have to build capacity in your work processes and your planning to really plan for the when something happens.
Thank you. Do you have any advice for employers who are looking to improve their own safety models?
Big question. Yes. What that would be, I mean, probably, I think, honestly, the whole conversation and the acknowledgement around the idea that people make mistakes is huge. Like we all sort of get that, intellectually, but for some reason, sort of saying that out loud or putting that on paper for organizations is a really big deal. So having, some internal discussion and challenge and pushback around that, I think is really one of the healthiest places to start. So, understanding like people make mistakes and that really error is not a choice, and that you do have to plan for error to happen and build it into your system, build capacity into your system rather than taking things out of your system. It's really probably the first step to get started.
Yeah. And also looking at how you respond to failure when it occurs, right? And so we've historically gone the blame and punish route. And so looking at who we can blame if what went wrong. We got to really shift that. And an organization needs to really focus on ways to learn and improve when a failure occurs, because it's going to happen again, right? It wasn't that person's fault. If you replace it with another person and they're in that same contextual situation, their same everything happens, it may happen again. And so fixing the worker doesn't fix anything. Fixing the system and how that worker got to that point is where we need to focus on, and how we can learn and get the feedback from the crews as well. I mean, I can sit in this office and try to fix everything, but getting the feedback and input from the crews is really kind of where the rubber meets the road. And I think getting their buy-in and their input in anything that you use is critical.
I think I'll just add another point on that, James, and that's to say that don't fall into the worker first trap. Although everything that we do is absolutely for that frontline employee, one of the best things to do is really get that leadership engagement and buy-in first. We've certainly learned from ourselves and learned from others as well, is that that is sort of a key piece. The question was, how do you get started? And really it's having those discussions, getting leadership engagement and buy-in, number one, before just throwing things out. You know, it's much less about the them out there. It's more about the us in here in terms of a leadership mindset.
Last question, and then I think we're at time. Is the capacity model training being offered to your Spanish speaking employees?
It
Yeah.
is.
Excellent.
For I think it's English, Spanish, and French Canadian, right, Barbara? Because we have some Canadian operations as well.
That's correct. Yeah. So as we've released things in phases, so we've put the English content has come out first, and then we're actually in the process of releasing all of the others. We have quite a bit right now in Spanish and French Canadian, and some of our curriculum that was just released will have those translations as well. So that's really important to us to meet our needs for our workforce.
Excellent. Well, we are at time. Is there a good place where people can reach out to you if they might have questions about the capacity model?
Absolutely. Let me move on to the next slide. Here's our email. We're happy to answer any questions or do anything you need as far as providing more information on the capacity model. It's one thing about safety is it's all about sharing, right? And so we're excited to help our other organizations if we need to. But I mean, I can't thank NSC enough for the opportunity to speak today. Big shout out to the other finalists as well. I was sitting in their presentations and they did an awesome job. It's really cool to see all the innovation that's happening in the safety world, and just honored to be in those conversations for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you, James and Barbara, for coming to speak to us about this. Good luck to you at the upcoming Green Cross Awards, and congratulations again for really being thought leaders in this area. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. Again, these webinars were all recorded and will be posted on our YouTube if you want to check them out. But otherwise, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and we hope to see you next week at Congress. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.